So let's just take a look at this bit of code here. What is that doing? Well, dim r as a range. And now since this is a range object, which is this area here, B2 to C4 is B2 to C4 is this area here. So we set the range. Now when we have an object variable, which is what this is, this r, then we must use the word set. I think you may remember that when we have an ordinary, for example an integer, then we could use the word let, but we don't. But that's when it's an ordinary non-object variable. But when we have an object, you must remember to use the word set to set the range object equal to this particular range. It's a very common mistake actually to leave that out. If you, okay, so now just within that range we can actually select within that range, well that's the range I'm talking about, which is highlighted, but within that range I'm going to try and select cells 1, 2. Now that will mean within that range it's row 1, which is here, this row, and then column 2, which is this column. So row 1, column 2 will be this, row 1, column 2 will be the cell over on the right hand side. So let's just try that and run it, and you can see it does select that cell within that particular range. So you can see how it's relative to a range. Notice the way that we normally use cells. We have two numbers in here, the row and the column. There is another way of using cells. I'll just get rid of that code here. If I just type cells, but I use just one number, we'll select that particular cell. And if I click that, you'll see it does, let me click away first, and then I click, it does select that cell. If I do cells 2, it will select the cell to the next one across, and cells 3 will be, and so on. We go across the page. Now, and if we reach the end, it will start on the next line actually. So it's interesting, isn't it, that you can have two indices here. You can have something like that, which is cell row 1, column 3, or you can just have cells 3, which is the third cell across. Now, if we now try to introduce a little set of numbers over here, and we want to, our task is to copy, is to read out those particular numbers. So we're going to do that using a loop, and I'll just show you the code to do that. Let's just see that it works for a start. If I run that code, and I need to dim that variable, dim r as range. Okay. It looks like I've just got a bit more code than I need here. I'll just, right, so if, that should be okay. And now okay, I've given that a different name, so I need to dim it, RNG. Okay, so that you can see that it goes through cells one by one and message box out each one. But the important thing, I think, we've got our ordinary loop here from 1 to 8, but the important thing to show here is this line here. We're defining a range to be this particular range. As you can see here, range A1 to A8 is that range. Now within that range you're selecting cells I. Now normally, as I just showed you before, that cells I will, if you allow it unrestrained, it will go that way across. But if you restrict it to that particular range, it sort of can't get out. It can't sort of go to the right, and it's sort of got to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a useful construction when you just use a single parameter to loop through a set of cells. Incidentally, there's a nice way of dealing with this range here. What I'll do is make a name. So the easiest way to make a name is to do that and then highlight it and then just type in the name that you want up into this name box, rather than going through the formulas and defining names and all that sort of thing. So if you just press enter, make sure you press enter and not just click away. That will define that particular named range, so I can select it, you see, and reciprocally, if you select it, it'll appear up here. And what I can do in code, which is very convenient, is to, instead of that particular range A1 to A8, I can name the range in here, and then you'll see that that works as before. It's very useful, that in that you can sort of transfer between Excel and your program. For example, if someone were to change that range to make it a bigger range, then you could do that within Excel and the code would still remain the same.